And away we go. It's another edition of the Arrowhead Pride Editor Show. My name is Pete Sweeney. I'm the editor-in-chief of arrowheadpride.com. Once again, joined by my esteemed deputy editor, John Dixon, and another member of our great staff here at Arrowhead Pride, lead analyst Ron Kopp. This is a special edition of the Arrowhead Pride Editor Show because of course, it's Monday Night Football game night. The Chiefs and the Raiders taking on each other at GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium. John, I'll start with you. What's your anticipation level for this game right now?
Pretty high. The Chiefs don't make it Raider week quite like they used to back in the 90s
Right.
with Marty Schottenheimer, but among fans, it's still a big deal, and I'm in that group. So Raider week is a big deal to me.
I think it's just the most historic rivalry the Chiefs have. I mean, dating back to the AFL days. And I think the problem that you run into sometimes with these rivalries is just the fact that both teams need to be quality to feel like it actually matters. And Chiefs have been relevant for a long time now. The Raiders, here and there, they've had some interesting teams, but largely disappointing there in Oakland and now Las Vegas. Ron, what's your anticipation level for tonight?
Yeah, you mentioned the rivalry. It's kind of sad. We don't really get these night games, Chiefs Raiders, anymore. Actually, doing a little research, I've run into the fact that this is actually the first Monday Night Football game at Arrowhead against a division rival in the Mahomes era. So we really don't get these,
Really?
these and the Raiders. I don't even remember the last time we saw them in prime time, especially in Arrowhead. So, it's just kind of nice to see this rivalry kind of on the prime time again in a big stage.
There he is, Ron Kopp, coming in with those research nuggets that you can find at arrowheadpride.com. If you like the Arrowhead Pride Editor Show, you can leave us a rating and a review on Apple iTunes. We'll typically read them on this show. We're not going to do it today just because this is a special episode, a preview episode of Monday Night Football. But we are going to stick with you, Ron, and talk about your 5 things to watch in this game. And the first one that you here had listed, the article that you do each and every week at arrowheadpride.com, but the first one you had listed here for this particular game is, can the Chiefs match their week 4 energy?
Yeah, that is the biggest thing to me, because I think it was such a difference between week 3 and week 4, the Colts game, how they came out. And I'm not even talking about just the players' energy, but also the aggressiveness of the coaching staff within their game plan, just in terms of, how much they were getting receivers open rather than just trusting them to get open themselves, how much they were helping the run game with a variety of different kinds of run calls rather than just, all right, we'll run outside zone this way, then that way, and keep doing that. So I'm interested to see that. And it is kind of the key point here is just that the Chiefs are kind of in this sandwich right now between games where they're underdogs. Right. The Bucs game, they were an underdog, and then we've already seen it. This Bills game the next week, they are 2.5-point underdogs per DraftKings Sportsbook at the moment. So I'm just kind of curious to see if that does lead to any sort of lapse in kind of what we saw in the Colts game. The same thing. I'm interested to see if they kind of right the ship a little bit with that and continue to look like they did against the Bucs. Come out firing.
I was having a conversation with somebody this week off the air and talking about the Chiefs and where we're at in the Patrick Mahomes era. And I just find it to be somewhat of an interesting place because the Chiefs, I think they maybe got up a little bit for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but it's not like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers brought that energy that maybe they would have had if they played them right after they lost them in the Super Bowl. It took a few years to get there, and it's not like there is a Tom Brady Patriots that exists. I don't know if there's any particular team that the Chiefs truly feel like they need to get up for. Like maybe that's the Cincinnati Bengals, but they've had a disappointing start to their season at 2-3. They seem like a little bit of a one-hit wonder. But I think what you saw happen last week is the Chiefs did get up, but I think that had less to do with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and more that they were embarrassed themselves about all the mistakes that they made to lose that game against the Indianapolis Colts. So, John, you can understand where I think some of that energy that Ron is talking about came from.
I agree. I think you're exactly right about that. And I think Ron is right to bring up that the intensity level is something to pay attention to in this game. But I would point out that even though Andy Reid doesn't bellow Raider Week, men, as during practices like Marty Schottenheimer used to do, they have a special emphasis on these division games. And I think that's why you can expect the Chiefs to put the proper emphasis on this game. Not only is it a division game, it's a primetime game. And I think that the Chiefs will be up for this game more so than they would for a normal one. But it's a fair question because it is sandwiched between these two other games where the Chiefs are not favored to win. And they're obviously expected to win this game against the Raiders.
I do think that, there is maybe a little bit of that. I'm going to come out and say it here, trap game feel, right? Because everyone and their mom is looking forward to Chiefs and Bills next week. But I think what you have here in front of you, and Andy Reid is really good about reminding these guys, like, this is an everyday thing. What you have in front of you is an opportunity to more or less end any Raiders' hope for a division title.
Yeah.
I mean, they could be 1-4 and still rally back and find themselves maybe in that wild card mix. But if you go down 1-4 and then suddenly the Chiefs are way in front of the division, like, to me, if the Chiefs are 4-1 and the Raiders are 1-4, I know there's 17 games. They're probably not coming back from that. So I think you have a grand opportunity on hand. And I think the Raiders got to be excited. And we'll go to your second point, Ron, to watching this game, because this is the silver and black debut of Davante Adams at Arrowhead Stadium.
Right. Yeah. Their big key addition this offseason. Kind of one of those kind of moves that signals that they are all in right now, that they shouldn't be 1-3 at this point, right? That they should be contending better than they are. But that's the thing, man. He's still very good. He's been good this year. The thing I take away from it is how big of a target share he takes in the Raiders offense, and how we've seen already these Chiefs cornerbacks this year. If there's one place this defense has really gotten picked apart, it's the outside cornerbacks. We obviously the Chargers game, Mike Williams, gave Rashad Benton and a few other players quite a day there. And then last week, I know it kind of was a little bit different of a game script because they got down so heavy right away. The Bucs did. But, even they had some success attacking the Chiefs outside corners. So I think, especially with the Raiders offense, how they function, I think they should lean into that, because I do think, when you look at the rest of the Chiefs defense, how they're playing right now, I think this could be the biggest mismatch, the single biggest mismatch the Raiders have, offense versus Chiefs defenses, just attacking, back shoulder fades, slant routes, just attacking Chiefs outside cornerbacks with Davante Adams specifically.
We're talking about Chiefs and Raiders coming at you tonight, ESPN 7:15. I know a lot of you will be at the game, and I think this point, it actually lends some weight to another point that we've been thinking about here at Arrowhead Pride for a little bit here. Trent McDuffie is on the mend, and we expect him to be back after this game. And if you really look at the Chiefs cornerbacks right now, Darius Sneed is that dude, right? We've been really impressed with Jalen Watson. Rashad Fenton of the three, I think you sort of worry about the most. I'm looking at this matchup and I'm thinking, okay, Davante versus Jalen Watson. Okay. Gives me a little bit of the heebie-jeebies, but I think am a little bit more worried about what would be Adams versus Fenton. And John, I don't know if you feel this way in this particular game. It feels like, just like Mike Evans did, like, we can kind of expect Davante is going to have 100 and maybe a touchdown, but it's like, can the Chiefs just score more, considering that, like, this guy is one of the best receivers in the NFL, and he's definitely going to get the Chiefs with their current cornerbacks?
Well, I think that's exactly the way we have to look at it, because I think it's going to be very difficult for the Chiefs to hold a player like Adams to less than a big game, because he's turned in big games every week with the Raiders. At least in terms of their investment in him personally, it's been a good investment for him, but it hasn't resulted in more wins. That's been the problem. And part of that has been, injuries. And Ron, didn't you say that they've on like their 9th offensive line this season? Yeah. So they've
different offensive line combinations.
Yeah. So this is going to be a problem for them all season. And so the Chiefs are just going to have to figure out a way to win the game, even if Adams has a big game, which seems pretty likely.
Yeah, and look, just because Adams is getting targets and he does accumulate yardage doesn't necessarily mean the Raiders are going to win.
Right.
And this is a point I made too, and this is something to remember, I think, going into the game, because I think it is going to be frustrating for at least a portion of seeing what Adams can do. But, like, Mike Evans is one of the better receivers in the NFL. Jalen Watson was covering him well, and Evans went up and got that touchdown. Look, the Chiefs still dominated that football game and won. I think sometimes you gotta realize, like, these guys get you sometimes, especially when it's a quarterback receiver combination that's so used to each other, dating back to college. And this is what the Raiders have felt can unlock. Derek Carr hasn't exactly panned out yet when it comes to wins, but I just think the Raiders are a much more dangerous offense, obviously, with Adams. Ron, let's continue on with your third point in your 5 things to watch here at Arrowhead Pride. More Skyy Moore. I know that there's a lot of fans smiling when you say that. There have been some pushes out there, let's say, in our mentions, in our comments. We need to get more and more involved. So why do you see that in this game?
Well, I think the Chiefs kind of told you or showed you last week, I would say. It did seem like there was a concerted effort to get Skyy Moore a little more involved. There's a couple times they were in their traditional RPO slant, and he was that primary slant route. And Mahomes actually forced it one time, which kind of tells you, even he is trying to, get him involved, almost force it to an extent. So I just think his skill set, what he brings to the receiving core, it's just different from what the other receivers bring. And it's been proven. I didn't know that for sure going into the season, if he was going to be a much better, separator at the line, the footwork at the line. But, we were all at training camp, you see the difference between what he looks like right off the line and creating separation off of a tight coverage, on a slant or an in-breaking route compared to the rest of the receivers. And I really think with defenses trusting man coverage a little more this year, kind of testing them, saying, hey, look, you're going to have to beat us one-on-one. You don't have Tyreek anymore. So we're not as fearful of, Tyreek just beating one guy and going for 70 yards. And so I think that is one thing in the Colts game. It was actually kind of prevalent, the receivers not beating man coverage as much. I think Skyy has that skill. And so that's why I think it's important he keeps progressing into the offense, because I do think at some point that skill is going to become a super important part of the pass game. And, the more and more he gets involved, the more comfortable he'll feel when it kind of needs to be an important part of the pass game. It doesn't need to be maybe at this current moment, but it needs to when it really matters down the stretch.
We go to these press conferences a lot, and Steve Spagnuolo and our pal Uncle Dave Till, pretty forthcoming. Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy less so. And sometimes when it comes to the offense, you really have to look at what happens on the field and the numbers to really see what these guys are thinking. And I think this is an important game because Mecole Hardman has been a little bit banged up, and we've seen Skyy Moore get more involved. Has that been because Mecole Hardman has this heel thing, or is it more like, okay, we really need to give more opportunities because now Mecole, it seems, is trending to be 100%. So now that he's 100%, are we still going to see Skyy Moore being more involved in the offense? I know that they see him currently as a returner, but it's hard to argue with the separation, right? We have the NFL Next Gen stats going now, and Skyy Moore has been able to get some separation. And I know that there's a lot of Chiefs fans looking at Pittsburgh, and George Pickens looks pretty darn good, but George Pickens is also getting the opportunities that Skyy Moore isn't. So I'm wondering, John, if we start to see even more, despite Mecole Hardman maybe being 100% after dealing with the heel for a couple weeks.
Well, I think it's all the things that you mentioned. I think part of it's that he's a rookie. Part of it is, and he's still, getting himself acclimated to the offense and all the routes that he has to know in order to be in the Chiefs offense. But I think also the fact that they've got Smith-Schuster and Valdez-Scantling in front of him, and they're trying to figure out what those guys have. And then after the week 3 game, Eric Bieniemy said, well, we've got to get him more snaps, clearly. And then they did. And some of that may have been because Hardman was hurt in that game, remained having a problem with this heel injury. And so we may see less of Moore, but then again, Smith-Schuster might be out in this game. So there's a lot of moving pieces here, and we could end up seeing about the same that we saw in week 4 for Skyy Moore, or we might see something else entirely. So we'll just have to see how it plays out.
This is something I have to do after this live podcast, but NFL Network's Tom Pelissero has said that it's likely Juju plays. So I don't know how that might factor into some of the playing time that Moore gets tonight. But Ron, I can see you have a point. What do you want to say?
Well, just real quick, I'm glad you brought up the Juju part, because I do think that's an important piece of this too, is that, a lot of what Juju's done this year is that short area, those quick hitting routes that I think Skyy is best at right now. And I think Mecole's role is a little more, it's that defined role, right? And I do think if maybe Juju doesn't play as much tonight, maybe more of a pitch count a little bit, I do think it gives Skyy the opportunity to do what he's best at in Juju's place on those snaps.
Worth mentioning, and John, I heard you talk about MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. It is October 10th, which means it is Marquez's 27th birthday. So if you're feeling froggy, maybe head on over to Kansas. The DraftKings sportsbook online. It sounds like an anytime birthday touchdown. We might see Marquez Valdez-Scantling first touchdown as a Chief right here on his birthday on Monday Night Football. All right, Ron, let's continue with your point. We're going to flip it to the other side with your fourth point, 5 things to watch at arrowheadpride.com. Continuing the strong run defense, and the defense, to I think everyone's surprise, has been the most consistent part of the 2022 Kansas City Chiefs, and I think it starts with the run game. What are you thinking when it comes to the Chiefs in tonight's matchup?
Yeah, isn't it funny how it wasn't that long ago the run defense seemed to be the only thing anyone could complain about around here, and now it's definitely the most solid thing on, especially on the defensive side, leading the league in total rushing yards allowed, the least obviously. And only 2 teams have allowed fewer yards per attempt to this point. And so I do think that's important here because I mentioned, the Davante Adams is a huge part of this, right? But, the Raiders are also, Josh McDaniels, he's from the Patriots tree. He's also a guy that understands the value of running the ball. And they do rank, 8th this year in the NFL in average yards per carry with 5 yards per carry as a team. And actually, Josh Jacobs, who is kind of funny, in the preseason, we didn't really know exactly who the Raiders running back was going to be. Fantasy guys kind of, thought it was going to be more of a committee. All of a sudden, he turns into a bell cow back and looks really good. He actually has the 3rd most yards after contact among running backs this season. So I do think the important part about this is that the Raiders are going to stay in their 11 personnel a lot, 3 receivers with Renfro, Matt Collins, Darren Waller, and Adams. And so the Chiefs are going to be in their nickel sets a lot. So they're not going to necessarily be in the best spots to stop the run, right? So that's where it's going to be really important for guys like Derek Nottie, Nick Bolton, any of the other interior guys that to really win their matchups in the middle. So they can kind of, not get taken advantage of numbers wise in the box. They can still, they can kind of win even if the Raiders kind of spread them out a little bit and kind of get those lighter boxes. Guys like Derek Nottie kind of overcome that by being beasts. So
I don't know.
I'm looking for that.
I don't know what happened with the Gruden Bisaccia era, but I used to look at Josh Jacobs and like this guy's pretty good. Exactly. And then all of a sudden he sort of just fell off, right? Where they weren't giving him opportunities. And I don't know, were there injuries? Did it seem like maybe that regime was overthinking it a little bit? But it does seem like this new regime has gotten back to Jacobs. And that's been a strong point for the Chiefs. And I think it's been, and John, I'll let you take it from here, but I think it's been a complaint we've had for years, especially early season, just how these runners would gash the Chiefs. And I think there's a little bit to it when it comes to bringing in Joe Cullen along the defensive line, but it does seem like a source of pride for the Chiefs now, when you talk about sacks and whatever. Like you ask Frank Clark, who maybe is a bad example, but for example, you ask, hey, Frank, how do you feel about sacks? He's like, well, we got to stop the run. This is what they want to do, and they want to set that tone early in the game. And I think it's been able to. They've set the tone for the whole game when it comes to the whole defense. When you're stopping the run, it kind of leads to success everywhere.
Yeah, there's only been 3 things that have been certain for Chiefs fans for a long time: death, taxes, and being bad against the run. I mean, that's just the way it's been for a long time now. And so it's I don't even know how to react to the Chiefs leading the league in run defense as they did going into week 5. I think now they're now in 3rd, but we'll see how this game goes. Or sorry, in 2nd place now. But we'll see how this game goes tonight and how many yards they give up to Josh Jacobs. Because the Raiders are pretty good against the run too, and I think that makes this game more likely to be a shootout than another game might be where the Chiefs are playing with a good run defense. And so I think, and the Chiefs pass defense, as Ron noted a little while ago, has not been all that great this year. Right. And it's not necessarily the fault of the starting players, but they've been hurt and they've had to be, messing with changing things around in order to deal with that. So I think this adds up to a lot of passing yards in this game tonight and possibly a lot of scoring as well.
Well, the good folks at ESPN hope you're right, John. I hope for a lot of passing, a lot of points, and a lot of reasons to continue to watch Monday Night Football each and every week. All right, Ron, let's get to your final point here that you have at arrowheadpride.com. Red zone battles in this game between the Chiefs and Raiders.
Yeah, one of the most interesting stats I found from this Raiders research is that their offense actually scores on 50% of its possessions, which is tied with the Chiefs for the best rate in the NFL. And so that tells you that they should be one of the best offenses in the league. but they ranked 10th in points scored. And so that goes to tell you that, maybe the red zone, maybe they're not finishing drives, right? Maybe, they're kicking a lot of field goals and not scoring touchdowns, and it bears out in their red zone success. They have the 30th 28th ranked red zone success rate this year in terms of turning red zone possessions into touchdowns. And the thing is, why I found that interesting is that the Chiefs red zone defense, it was actually, it's funny. You guys remember last year it was a huge topic at the beginning of the year, the red zone defense. Well,
right.
It's not as much a topic when the rest of the defense is playing well, but it's been bad this year. They've allowed 80% of their possessions in the red zone to turn into touchdowns. And when you think about that's 12 of 15, when you think about it, one of those was the Jalen Watson pick six, which, they deserve credit for making that play. But, I think that was also a lot of, it was a bad throw and a bad play by the Chargers. So all that to say is I think this is where, the offense versus the Raiders offense versus Chiefs defense really comes down to it. If they can hold them to field goals like, other teams have been doing to the Raiders this year, that's going to make the difference in this game. Davante Adams is going to be heavily targeted down there, but they also have Darren Waller, who, we saw Darius Harris, in his first game with the Colts, give up, he wasn't the culprit on both touchdowns to the Colts tight ends, but, Colts tight ends had success in the red zone, right? And so all that to say, Darren Waller is a pretty good piece to be thrown in the red zone. And so linebackers, safeties, the cornerbacks are all going to have, their a big test in the red zone tonight.
Yeah, we'll see how the Chiefs fare. I think you're right. I think it is going to be interesting. And what I wonder too is just because the Chiefs are the Chiefs, and it seems like teams have learned this a little bit over the years. If the Chiefs are able to get those third down stops, will the Raiders opt to leave the offense on the field, just knowing that maybe Patrick Mahomes can get them? Adam Schefter had a stat this morning. In the 8 starts that Patrick Mahomes has played the Raiders, the Chiefs have scored 37 points. Not to say that that'll necessarily continue tonight, but for some reason, when Pat sees the silver and black, it seems like the Chiefs offense tends to explode here. So your 5 points again, Ron, as we go through them. Can the Chiefs match their week 4 energy? Corralling Davante Adams, one of the better receivers in the NFL. More Skyy Moore. Love the wordplay on this man's name. Continuing a strong run defense, and of course the red zone battles. Those are the things that Ron has to watch. You can read more about them right now at arrowheadpride.com. And with that, I'm going to bring Steve Serta in because all of us at AP make game predictions. And so, Steve, you haven't had an opportunity to talk today, so we'll start with you. How do you see this game going? What is your final score?
I think I kind of agree with you guys a lot on how you've kind of broken down this game. And I think there is going to be points scored in this game. I just think at the end of the day, the Chiefs are just the better top to bottom team. And, Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. And it's hard for me to envision a scenario in which this Raiders secondary that has struggled all season long is really going to shut down the Chiefs passing attack. Like, I just don't see it happening. I think the defense is going to be able to get after Derek Carr because their offensive line is not a strength of the team, but I still think they'll find a way to put some points up in this game. But I think inevitably the Chiefs are just too much for the Raiders and they win 38-27.
38-27. So they cover. The over hits. What's the over? 51, I believe. And the point spread is 7, both according to DraftKings Sportsbook. All right, John, let's continue with your prediction.
Well, I think there's 2 possible outcomes here. One is that the Chiefs get out to an early lead and start playing prevent defense. And I think if they do that, then the Raiders will score a lot of points that will drive Chiefs fans crazy over the rest of the game. But the Chiefs will still win by a touchdown or so. And the score will be a lot closer than the game would indicate, as the saying goes. The other possibility is that the Raiders will be matching the Chiefs score for at least a little while in the first half. But I think in that case, the Chiefs will pull away and again pull out a victory around the point spread, somewhere around 7 points. So my prediction for this game is I have to think about this for a second. It's 34-27.
There you go. Okay. I like that score as well. Speaking to your point about the prevent defense, this is why sometimes yards per game and even points per game can be a little bit non-telling. Yeah. And not to be Twitter explainer guy, but that's why a lot of people like the DVOA, because it tends to include situations. And Steve Spagnuolo even said this week, right? Like when you're up 3 scores, it's all about time, baby.
Right.
So keep keep the guys in front of you. Don't allow a quick score, and you're probably going to wrap up the game. I was really impressed last week. I made this point on the radio. I'll make it again quickly here. It's just like we don't see the Chiefs just control a game like they did against a great team like the Bucs. It always seems like, okay, oh man, the Bucs are, typically speaking, it would have been like, oh, somehow the Bucs are within 3. Are we going to really give them the ball back? Is this what, as a Chiefs fan, you're worried about that. Right. And man, it was impressive how they were able to control the game. And like sometimes when you look at the box score, it looks a little bit worse than it was. They won 41-31, but to me, it was almost this dominating, almost felt like a 17-21 point win over the Bucs. All right, Ron, let's continue with your score prediction.
Well, kind of along to your point with the controlling the game part of it. I actually with you, John, on your point about kind of the prediction that it could be kind of a matching score for score kind of game at first, right? I could definitely see. I think Josh McDaniels' first year as a head coach, he understands how important it is to beat the Chiefs in the division. I think he comes out and definitely has a good game plan. I think the Raiders offense gets going kind of early, and the Chiefs have to match it. But in terms of the controlling the game part, I think in the second half, I think this is when you see the offensive line once again shine. I think you see the run game kind of come through, and Clyde and Pacheco. I think you mentioned MVS's anytime touchdown earlier. I think for some reason Pacheco just screams like a touchdown tonight. I just feel like he's getting going a little bit.
It would be just like Pacheco to ruin Marquez's birthday touchdown.
Hey, they can both score. Come on, we got plenty of points to go around.
That's right. That's right.
No, I can just feel the run game getting going and getting Pacheco his first touchdown and all that. So I guess he scored in Arizona, but his first legit touchdown maybe at home and everything. So all that to say is I really feel like it's going to be a close game in the first half, but then this Chiefs offense with the run game feature takes off in the second half, gets to a 40-23 score, and we're setting up for a great game next week in Buffalo or against Buffalo.
These teams, I just feel like they do know each other well, but when you have a new coaching staff, it changes the game a little bit. So I don't really know exactly what we're going to get tonight. I think if it was still the old era, and we know why that ended and so on and so forth, that man, I just would feel like the Chiefs would roll. But I think there's going to be some mystery to how the Raiders defend the Chiefs a little bit. And we've seen the Chiefs offense go through growing pains. Really took off last week. But I just think there's some mystery here tonight, and it's still a division game. And the Raiders, we got to say, like, I think they're better than their 1-3 record, and they're in absolute desperation mode. We've already talked about that. Like this, they've created a situation for themselves by going 0-3. They were able to beat the Broncos. So now they're 1-3. They've created a situation for themselves where they can't really afford to lose all that much anymore. And every game is already for them almost a playoff game. I think they play the Chiefs tough. I think they come in with a good defensive game plan. I think this is a little more of teeth pulling than maybe you guys have. And I know a lot of people like the over in this game. I think I like the under. I do like the Chiefs to pull it out. I don't even like them to cover. I think they win this game 26-20. And we see Matthew Wright needing to hit some field goals in what is going to be a game that the Raiders need so bad. They're going to play well, but the Chiefs are going to just end their hopes and dreams as they typically find a way to do. So I have a little bit of a lower scoring game. Typically, I like to predict the shootout, but I just feel like this is going to be more of a battle than the Chiefs maybe had last week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, just because you are in that desperation for these last
so you're thinking that Matthew Wright will miss an extra point, or how are you getting to 26 points there? Are you talking about 4 field goals and a couple of touchdowns?
Something tells me the Chiefs are not going to cover that point spread tonight. And so I need maybe Matthew Wright misses one. He's been great, right? He went 7-7 last game. Let's get that out of the universe right now. Did you not listen to Aaron Rodgers yesterday, John? We're not supposed to put bad terms and bad vibes into the universe. Okay.
It's all our fault, man.
There we go. 4 for 4. The Chiefs predicted to win by all of us on Monday Night Football. We will be posting our large staff prediction that we have about 20 of them now at arrowheadpride.com coming up soon. Appreciate Ron Kopp. Appreciate Steve Serta. Appreciate John Dixon. If you like the Arrowhead Pride Editor Show, you can find it each and every Monday. Typically, we would have marinated takeaways, but this is a nice marinated pregame for you that we cooked up for you. And we will be back next week. Rate us, review us. Appreciate you guys for watching live, and most importantly, enjoy the game. Thank you for listening to another edition of the Arrowhead Pride Editors Show.